All right, I believe we are live. What's up, everyone who's out there? If you're watching live, hello, good afternoon, good evening. If you're catching it later on, thank you for listening and hearing from more of our presenters this year and just more good people out there in the world doing work everywhere, coast to coast, at all levels, and hopefully inspiring you to keep doing the work that you're doing. Today, we have a new colleague of mine. But someone that I learned is another person doing great work. And this is really about lifting up the stories of folks that are doing great stuff, showing you more from the people who are doing presenting workshops this summer, and just connecting people to people. So without any more introductions, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What do you do? Why do you do it?
Sure. So thank you for having me. Nice to be in company, humbled. So my name is Samia Shoman. I am a mother, an educator, a community organizer / activist, I would say. I, during the day, work for the San Mateo Union High School District. I have for the past 18 years. Worked before that in Jefferson Union High School District. And my current role is manager of English learner and academic support programs, which encompasses lots of things, two of which are running our English learner programs for the district, including our bridge program, which you can see my background has some of my babies behind me. And I'll talk a lot about our program, specifically the bridge program, when I present next week. And then implementing in ethnic studies and getting to work with all those teachers. I'm proud to be in a district who adopted a grad requirement way before the state made it a law to do that. And lots of all the kinds of things in between. So that's kind of like my work life. I am very blessed. I am the mother of 11-year-old twins who are getting promoted this week to middle school. So, I don't know what kind of space I'll be in like this time next year. But boy and girl, Palestine, named, in Arabic, Palestine stands for Palestine. My son is Jihad. I am pretty lucky. They are pretty awesome. Kids most of the time, almost all the time. So my daughter is very creative and innovative and, little bossy, witty. My son, super smart, kind, empathetic, little sporty spice, both really working on building their critical consciousness, especially around Palestine, immigration, policing in the US. We talk about it all. We talk about it openly and honestly. I think I've talked about my community work. So I am identify as Palestinian, Muslim, American, born and raised in Cali, but fortunate to have had many opportunities growing up to visit and spend summers in Palestine. And now I'm doing the same for my kids. We'll be off in a couple of weeks to go back home. So do a lot of kind of community organizing in that space in Arab American communities, work for the Middle East Children's Alliance Teach Palestine Project, trying to get Palestine and teaching of Palestine into more classrooms. And so those are, kind of some highlights a little bit. I'll talk more, about those things later, but it's kind of where I'm at and who I am.
Beautiful. Thanks for the introduction. For folks who don't know Samia, you hit on two main points, at least that I've heard a lot about, is how do we serve our English learners, our emergent bilingual folks, our newcomers, our kids that are here, and how do we give all kids, especially our kids of color, ethnic studies, and do it the right way, but not just add on, but like how do we do it systemically? So I appreciate those foci. The one thing I want you to add to is why, and not why did you start doing this kind of work, but now as you think about what's your reason for doing it today, what's your reason today for doing this kind of work?
Yeah, I started as an educator. I was like at the ripe age of 21 going on 22. And I think my purpose back then is still my purpose today. And that's to leave the world a little better than I came into it. I was born in San Francisco, and we lived here until I was going to in the middle second grade, and then we moved to Sacramento, and that's really where I was raised until I came back. Now I've lived in the Bay longer than I grew up in Sacramento, but growing up, the Sacramento I grew up in the schools I went to is vastly different than what it's like now. So it's interesting because the high school I actually went to is now predominantly a school for English learners, Spanish and Arabic speaking. And so I'm like, I speak both of those. I would love to be there. But I moving right out of the city and just the change of what my school looked like, both racially, ethnically, and then seemed social economically. Like we lived in a 2-bedroom flat out in the Sunset, and we're 7 kids and my parents. So 9, right? So I came from that to, a pretty nice house in Sacramento, 4-3. I had a backyard, I had a mailbox, and I thought we were rich. I'm like, oh my God, Dad bought us a mansion. And I started making friends, and I realized, oh no, that is not the case. They live in those and I live in a normal house. But all that to say is, having grown up from basically second grade to 12th grade, I felt different. I felt different all the time. I was surrounded by a lot of white students and most of my friends, except for, 2 close friends I had that were of color. And I realize now why I gravitated towards them. So I spent really my kind of second through 12th grade education just wanting to fit in and chasing this idea of American. Loved my culture at home. My friends wanted to be at my home. Like my mama always was cooking up something good. So they're like, oh, we'll work at the project at your house. Did your mom cook? And not knowing how to bring that into school spaces. Not knowing how to talk about my culture. My parents never invited them to really things at school. Ever. I think my parents' first time on campus in high school was like senior awards night. And I knew I was going to sweep a lot, so I wanted them to be there. But like the back to school nights, my soccer, all of that. So all that to say, I felt like I was one person going to school, one person at home. I couldn't figure out a way to bring those worlds together. Went to Davis, was commuting, right? I had the strict Arab Muslim parents. I was not going to move out of the house. So my choices were where I could get to school driving. And had the dreams of going to law school. Those were crushed when my dad passed away the summer after my sophomore year in college, to rethink what I could do, because I was going to have to continue to work. One of my friends from college mentioned teaching. I'm like, that sounds interesting. I started to intern at my old high school, fell in love. I'm like, I think I can do this. I was working at a family fun park out in Sacramento, managing teens all the time, and thought I was good at it. So, I pursued a teaching credential and mastered at San Francisco State. And that's where I kind of ran into Jefferson and teaching there. And I loved it. I still love it. I spend lots of time in the classroom. That's why when people ask me oh, what's next? Do you want to aspire to be whatever, a director or an assistant soup? I'm like, no. Too much, too political, too all that. I need to be close to kids. I want to be around kids every day, and I have a role now. So why? Because I spent my 16 years that I spent teaching before I became an administrator. I could seek out, I could feel those students, the students of color that were like me, trying to get after it, trying to fit in and not clearly. And I'd have conversations and they'd be like, oh my God, especially the girls or the young ladies, and they'd be like, how did you know? And I'm like, because I was you and and that's why ethnic studies is so important for me. I needed that. I wanted that. So I want to create spaces for all students. You just got here, right? I serve at Bridge our students and all of our 3 schools that serve ELD students that literally, right, they roll out from most of them, predominantly from Central America, through the holding and the detention centers in Chard District for that student that just got here. And the student that's been here all their life but hasn't quite found their space, because if they look like me, people are still asking them, even now, 2022, where are you from? Where are you from? People will never look, And so it's that ni de aquí, ni de allá, right? You're not from here, not from there. And this constant like searching for yourself. So that's why to create a space for all students, especially the students who are struggling to figure it out.
I appreciate that. And for me, I'm a similar, I'm a kid who is doing school for the kids that were like me that weren't being served as well. So I have a special affinity for my folks who are in it for those reasons, as opposed to in it to help kids like them. So I appreciate that, and I agree. Our kids need to see people that look like them, that have their stories, that can inspire them to know that it's possible, and also that we see that some things are broken and they need to be fixed. And we're there to support and also there to kind of help figure it out. So my next question is around pandemic schooling, and not the whole pandemic, maybe just this last year. When you think about the kids that you serve now, how do you feel like they responded in general to this comeback to school and this year where we were back? It was still a pandemic, wasn't quite what it was. How do you feel they dealt with it, and what kind of things came up for them?
That's fascinating, because a lot of the students I served, to me, like, weren't kind of phased by the pandemic. I mean, they come from crisis, right? And dealing in this level of resistance. So I don't know, it's not gonna be popular, but whatever. I speak my mind. So, you heard, and I know it's real, so I'm not diminishing it. Let me say that. But like this thing around, the mental health crisis, and people freak out, and people, not the newcomers, right? Because they are like, okay, it's scary. And I think for them, the fear is like, I'm going to get sick and not be able to work. And then what is that going to do for like my ability to provide? And I just got here now, and I'm barely learning how to use a computer. So like it was real, like the learning pods we were setting up, and then having to teach Zoom and all of those pieces. It definitely shined a light, right, on those with resources and those without. And that has been a big, right, storyline. But at the end of the day, I think what it shined the light on is like that extra factor of students who, right, have kind of lived in, I don't know, this world that is a pandemic to them, right? That is constantly asking them for more when they may physically not have it. So in a sense, it kind of gave them an opportunity to show something that doesn't have a price tag, because we live in capitalistic America that likes to put a price tag on everything. And that was strength, that was resilience, that was their ability to kind of like step up and make it through. And yes, it sucks trying to teach multilingual learners via a computer. They need that practice. So damn props to our teachers, because like they made it happen. And yes, we're seeing, maybe not as many kids progress forward, and we're feeling that piece. But to me, it was constantly navigating this, like, oh my God, the pandemic, dude, I don't know. I'm from Palestine. So it's like, this sucks and it's awful. And I'm scared for my kids to get sick. But I also know and witness like what people in other places go through every day. Plus this piled on to them. So I felt like, man, count our blessings, like, get it together and like support our students, because they need us. And I'm not, trying to diminish anybody's feelings, because I know people had a hard time, but I just had a different perspective on the whole thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Both we were shining a light on folks that were in the darkness and being put in the darkness, right? One, and then two, this piece for folks who have experienced crisis or trauma or difficulty or struggle. All of a sudden, everybody was experiencing some of that. But yeah, that's right. I mean, yes, everyone experienced differently. And we can't make assumptions. So what I feel like this is a good question to move to is thinking about your presentation this summer. So as you think about this topic of supporting newcomer English learners by creating a humanizing, safe, responsive, relevant, all that great space for them, in light of what the last couple of years have been like, or where everyone else is and where the system is, all that kind of stuff, what should educators be thinking about as they're serving newcomer students? What do you want them to be thinking about? What kind of conversations do you want to bring up this summer?
Yeah. What they should be thinking about first and foremost, you mentioned humanizing education. That doesn't happen without coming from a place of love, right? That's for us, what's helped be kind of anchor some of the success we've had, right? We're 5 years into our bridge program, but just coming from that place of love. We really use it in Lakesh pedagogy, right? And we anchor it really in a deep and meaningful way to set up conditions for a different kind of education, which I hope people started to realize is more possible through and after the pandemic, because we want to anchor our students in a community and a home away from their home. Lots of them had to leave what they feel like is their home from their various countries. And so really thinking about like, how do you create a community where students feel like they have another family? We always talk about bridge familia, whether you leave and you're done, you transition, you graduate, our students have different paths. And I think that's one of kind of the blessings that came out of the pandemic is it gave people permission. We can pivot. Oh, we can be nimble. Oh, we can try these things. It put things out on the table that people kind of knew, but then, it's status quo. And some people honestly have gone back to that. They've just gone, okay, pandemic's kind of over, or we are learning how to live with it. But I feel like in an interview around the pandemic, I saw a video with Bettina Love, and they asked her, and that she's on a panel, and they kind of are like, Bettina, you take it. And she goes off and she's like, now we can give kids computers, but we couldn't give them computers before. Like now we can give them like all of these things that we made rules around. And now all of a sudden we're allowed to break the rules. Keep breaking the rules. I want everybody to keep breaking the rules and do things that center students. So I'm excited. I'm excited about, we're starting actually with our staff. We have some new staff and some old staff, and our classified staff, including our instructional aides, our wellness counselors, and our teachers to really do this in Lakesh work with each other, right? And shout out, because I know the conference keynotes, Curtis and Carlos, that's who we're working with. To really deepen, what does that mean for us as a staff? What does that mean for us as a community, and how we teach our students, right, to be responsible? They are a big part of decision making. So I guess that's the other thing is like, I'm excited to lift up the ways you can bring students into the decision making and leadership of the spaces that they're educated in. And how do you create a space where you're learning from them as much as they're learning from you?
Yeah, I love it. So now let's build on that and think about the future, right? So where might education be headed? Where could it be headed 10 to 20 years from now? Whether that's a worry or a dream, what do you see in the next 10 to 20 years for our schools, our public schools?
Yeah, I guess it's a worrisome and a dream, right? I have, ever since becoming a mother, and the older my kids get, I feel like I'm starting to see things more from, a wider lens. What do I want for my kids? And I struggle, right? My kids bring home these things. I'm like, and I'm like, okay, just do it because, and then I just want to be like, hell no, don't do that stupid ass assignment. Like, so we're trying to navigate that, right? So I see a lot of, I give you an example of like where I don't see hope and then where I do see hope. My kids, each class, they choose a 5th grade speaker for graduation. And I think I mentioned my kids are twins and they are in the same class. They've been in the same class since TK. That's how we roll, and they like it. Also saved me during the pandemic. So they each decide they want to be a graduation speaker. They're talking it over because then they're like, oh, well, you got to help us both. And I'm like, and then they're like, you know what? How about if we do it together? We'll write a speech together. I'm like, oh my God, you guys, that's so awesome. Because that's also how they roll. They go to ask the teacher. She says no. And I'm like, what? She said no? Hell no. Okay, let me send it. I hate to get involved, but I'm like, let me send an email. I'm like, Palestinian Jihad said blah, blah, blah. And then she's like, yep, the rule is one speaker per class, family aside. That's just what we do. And she's like, unfortunately, I'm like, you know what? That is unfortunate because now I have to decide between, I can't control your decision. I have to control what's in my household, which is my kids' emotions and feelings and them both wanting my help. Anyway, long story short, my daughter decided to back off and she said, you know what, Jihad, you do the speech. Me and mama will help you and you better get chosen, which not surprisingly, he did not. But I feel like the rules, it's always been this way. Dude, that needs to go. All of that, like this tradition, that's how we've done things. Times have changed. It's not when we were doing this. So flexibility, creativity, upending what schooling and education really is, right? Liberatory, like and that's why, right? That's why we're going to Jordan. That's why we're going to Palestine. That's why we visit like all these different places, because like it's not going to happen within the school walls and it's got to happen outside. So I think, this idea of what's happening between 8:30 and 3 for kids, like even the times, like that's got to change for sure. And don't get me wrong, I love school. I love learning, and I was really sucked into that, like, gotta get my A's, because I thought that's what it means to be successful, because that's what you're taught here. So I think there's some pockets of some amazing things happening around this country, but it's pockets. So I guess my dream in the next 10 to 20 years is, these things, these conferences, these connecting with people, that continues to happen where we together are building these liberatory spaces. And like refusing to kind of take part in the status quo.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, and that's the hope, right? And I like that you pointed out that there are examples, right? Whether they are one classroom or one school, but we can't pretend that we don't know what it looks like. We can't imagine it anymore. But how do we get more kids having access to all of these great things? So as we kind of move into summer and taking a break, and you're thinking about how to replenish, how do you refuel, right? What feeds your soul, right? You talk about traveling, even as you travel, what is it that you're getting when you're there? So how do you fill your cup to come back and continue fighting?
Yeah, I mean, number one thing I get is, well, when I'm Jordan with my husband's family, like they're hell of nice. So I'm doing nothing. I'm eating good, lots of time to read and really rest. And so obviously my body needs that. I think, jokes, you've seen me work around here. I'm like, go, 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 go. And then when I'm in Palestine, like you see being with family, right? But then just the inspiration, like the daily, you're standing at a checkpoint, trying to go to a place, patience, and just realize like in strength, like I just fill up my strength. People are like, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do it. I'm like, Palestinian, like they can do it. And they every day, right? Living under occupation on their indigenous land, and you see it. And like in the weddings and the parties and the this, and they're still thriving. And you're like, well, I go back to work and run all up here. Oh, you have so many things. Hell yeah, I have so many things. I could do this. Like they're doing it. So that's how, like, yes, the rest and the family time and not being on a clock, right? Like there's not a schedule. There's like not a plan. My husband's family laughs at me because I'm like, okay, do something today. And so I let go, but and then being in Palestine, right? Those opportunities to teach my kids, to visit the places that like, yeah, you go to the Al-Aqsa Mosque. The Dome of the Rock, like never felt so centered and at peace inside that anywhere in the world. So, you fill your bucket and refuel,
Love it. Nothing like being on homeland. Nothing like being around your people, right?
Yeah.
Can't beat that.
Yeah.
So how can folks stay in touch with you? And what are some things that you have on the horizon? So you talked about your day job. You got a moonlighting job too as well. And what do you want folks?
Yeah, I teach a few university classes. I work on the Teach Palestine, so teachpalestine.org stuff kind of on the side. And then, you're reading, trying to keep up, doing little things. I'm doing a Cheeto, which is the XITO. I'm doing a presentation for them, their institute in July, which is around, decolonizing education. And I'll be in Palestine at the time. So it's kind of cool. Really focusing on indigenous epistemology. So my trip, lots of reading. Yeah, Dr. DRSAMIA Shoman at Gmail. I'm on Instagram, Samia Shoman. I read tweets. I don't tweet as much. I'm trying to get better about it. I got a stack of books, so I'm excited to have a lot of time to read.
Beautiful, beautiful. So for folks who are listening, check out Samia's work, whether that is presentation she's doing, or really, the best thing for people that are still practicing doing the work is go talk to people and visit their schools, set up some conversations, reach out, connect teacher to teacher, whether that's through her bridge program and serving newcomer students, or this vast ethnic studies network that she and a group of folks have created. That's amazing. We're actually going to be featuring some students from the program that she helped start and helped create curriculum for, and our keynote speakers are from that work as well. So it's going to be a nice connection. So I appreciate you, Samia, for being a part of the conference, doing the work you're doing there, and just helping to connect the dots for everyone who can't see the connections yet, but we need them to see the connections so they can start serving our young people the right way. So thanks for being in it. Thanks for making time tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Super excited. And excited for people to make connections myself. I do this because I am forever a learner and love to meet other people doing the work. It takes a collective. I think we all know that.
For sure. So be well. See you in a week. And good luck with your trip. And I'll see you after the summer too.
Yeah, for sure. Take care. Thank you.